Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to Kardec Radio, where we are always nourishing our souls. I am Correa, and we gather together in the name of God and under the protection of Master Jesus and the inspiration of the mentors every Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. to study the ethical moral laws that are universal in nature. If we are wondering why study such laws, it is because, dear friends, we who already embrace Spiritism have come to understand that the more we study the divine laws, the more we shall invest in our discernment and reasoning, the more we are equipped to make better choices for immortality. Through this study, we are blessed with the opportunity to learn little by little, to look at life from an immortal perspective. Does that make a difference? Yes, it most certainly does, because then we make decisions, but we do the action and reaction math, thinking of what we shall reap not only in this life, but in the many lives to come. And also, dear friends, by studying the divine laws, we come to better understand the divine within us, and we become more consciously connected to God, our Creator. Reasons to be here every Tuesday at 9 p.m. And we would like to welcome everyone with a warm and fraternal embrace, expressing our gratitude towards each and every one of you as children of God. And we hope that every one of us can feel the embrace of the loving mentors who have prepared diligently in moments of reflection for us, intending to boost the best in each and every one of us as children of God. So let us begin, dear friends. Tonight, the focus of our attention will be on question 884 that Kardec asked on the third part of the Spirit's book under the law of love. Let us then begin by reading Kardec's question, followed by the illuminated Spirit's answers. After we read the question and answer, we shall bring a couple of highlights for our own reflection, and then we shall propose an exercise for us to view the scriptures and allow knowledge and feeling, wisdom and love to come together, helping us all to reach the most divine balance. Let us then begin by reading question 884 together. Question 884 is as follows. What characterizes legitimate property? Kardec asks. And the illuminated spirits answer, property is legitimate, except that which has been acquired without harm to others. And Kardec explains the law of love and justice by forbidding us to do to others what we would not want them to do to us, similarly condemns every means of acquiring property contrary to. Okay, beautiful explanation by the spirits. They are reminding us that when we are under the law of matter, subject to matter, but thinking in immortal terms, we come to realize that property, however permanent it may seem to our material eyes, they are in that what we take with us from this life onwards is not what we own, but how we have come to own certain properties and how we have established relationships with those properties, and most especially with those around us in evolution, enrolled in the school of life. So what do relationship with property? For instance, this is a cell phone. If I am very attached to the cell phone, if I forgot it somewhere, or if someone took it for some reason, we would feel fully and truly distraught, because this would mean the world to us. We would perhaps we have lost our north. However, if we look at this piece of equipment as a temporary concession from God, as it truly is, we then read the situation differently. We come to realize that if this property is no longer under our care or possession, it is because God has purpose for it. It's because someone needed it more than we did, or perhaps because this is a lesson on detachment. So we have a choice, dear friends, as to how we relate to matter and to those around us. Sometimes we see loved ones in our lives as our property. Sometimes we come to believe erroneously that our partners, our children, or our parents, when God calls upon them, or when we experience some sort of separation, be it through a divorce, be it because a loved one, moved to another country, or be it due to physical death, we may enter true depression. We may feel as though we lost our willingness to live. Some of us may feel as though we no longer have a purpose. This is the kind of property that does not feed us, rather, that feeds mental alienation in our lives. What do we mean by mental alienation? We mean that in such cases, we are living under the fantasy in our lives is ours. Everything in our lives is under our control, and that God should be our slave, like a genie in a lamp. If we rob the lamp and say, God, we want this person with us here now, God shall obey us. This is not the sense of property that the They invite us to permeate every one of our relationships, be it with loved ones or be it with objects that we own, with the law of charity, love, and justice. What does that mean? With the golden rule. If I were someone who needed to separate from my loved ones for whatever reason, to be feeling, or would we want to be feeling, that emotional pressure that we owe something to someone else? No, we would not want to be feeling that kind of emotional pressure. So because we wouldn't want to be feeling this kind of emotional pressure, we then wouldn't want to act in this way. So let us then, dear friends, do an exercise together. In the next 24 hours, rather than looking at our loved ones as ours, let us practice looking at them as children of God. And let us ask ourselves why God has placed us in their lives. We may serve God within this relationship. Because when we put ourselves in the place of God, or when we treat God as our slave, then we come erroneously to believe that we are the ones who determine what happens to our loved ones. We are the ones, we come to believe erroneously that we are the ones who shots. And this, beloved friends, causes us to live in mental alienation. We live in an alternative reality that does not correspond to the divine Creator's vision. And when life brings us back to reality, we often rebel. This is why it is important to understand that not are our properties, that one day God will call for this body that God has loaned to us. So we shall, of course, care for the physical body, treat it like a loving pet. Talk to the cells and tell the cells how much we care for them, but we shall not for day caring for this physical body non-stop, because we know that this is not the sole purpose of our lives. Caring for our bodies is an important purpose of our lives, but it is not the sole purpose, to the point that we spend the whole day thinking of clothing, thinking of accessories, thinking of our hair, thinking of makeup, thinking of suits, or thinking of fancy shoes. Nothing wrong with that, but that is not the purpose of our reincarnation. However, if we are too attached to our body, we may spend God's time excessively on our appearances. Also, if we come to believe, for instance, that our partners, we may come to erroneously believe that we are the ones who should dictate to them what their decision should be. We are the ones who erroneously come to understand that we know best, that they should listen to us, that we should have the final word. that if they had done X, Y, and Z as we suggested, if we hold on to this illusion, life will call upon us, and the awakening may be painful. So today, it is a good time for us to exercise the fact coming into contact with the reality that our loved ones are not ours, that they are given to us by God temporary as our property, but they are there as children of God. We may feel sometimes too that the spirit center is our property, that things should quote unquote be done our way. How do we know if we are going towards that direction? How can we assess where we are? If we walk into a space, and even if we don't say one word, but inside of our minds we are thinking, if we coordinated the efforts here, we would arrange the chairs differently. If we planned the calendar of talks here, this subject would not be there. If we were responsible for managing, we would make this and that and that and that kind of purchase. If we coordinated the community efforts, we wouldn't volunteer in X place, we would volunteer in Y place. And sometimes, friends, when we are listening to those who have made the pioneering efforts of opening a cell of the Christ and open doors to spiritism to us. Sometimes when we see their efforts, we say, why does this person speak in such a strange way? I don't like their tone of voice. We don't like the way they dress. We don't like the way they behave. And we have our quote unquote laundry list inside of our minds because we think that Spiritist center and we should dictate the rules. Again, this is mental alienation because God, under the law of love, justice, and charity, has asked us to love one another, not to judge one another. Of course, if we disagree with the way a particular spiritist center is run, we can feel free nuclei. But often, when we have fingers to point, we rarely have hands to get working towards doing the good. When we are too busy with entitlement, thinking that we know best, we are often not ready to actually plow through the work of the good. Think about where we are in terms of our sense of entitlement, in terms of our pride. How often do we come to believe that we know best? How often do we come to believe that we should have the final say? How often do we come to believe that we should make decisions for others? How often do we come to a job to fulfill our will? Because they, in fact, should only attend to us. Sometimes parents and children are like this in this dynamics as well. We have heard parents say to their children, "Oh, you better not do what you are planning to do because it is your job to take care of me." We gestated you, we brought you to life, therefore you cannot have a life of your own. We have heard parents say, "You are our property. We are to decide on your life for you." In this day and age, there are parents that feel this way. Some educators may feel even know the students quite well yet, and they already have an entire profile of that student made up in their heads. And if the student defies that profile, they will not admit that they needed to revisit their own understanding, because they come to believe that because of their higher education, they know better, and the students are to follow whatever they would like. How many of our relationships, dear friends, are ego driven like this, driven by our own desire to be in control? Because it is when we are held by this illusion that we are gods in people's lives that we come to believe that ever property. How many times may we have heard others say, "It's either my way or the highway"? When we hear individuals say such things, this shows that they believe they own an individual, another person, either emotionally or financially or mentally or both. How say, "Well, since we bring the paycheck home, since we are breadwinners, you better do as we wish or else." This is treating people as properties, not as children of God. So tonight we are being invited to revisit the lens through which we relate to one another. Being invited within the next 24 hours, beloved friends, to look at our loved ones, our colleagues, our children, our friends in our community through a different lens. What is this lens? It is the lens of the divine creator. We are being invited to look at one another as children of God, and we are being ourselves. Why did God place us in this person's life? How does God want us to serve that person, or to help that person, or to love that person, rather than seeking to be loved? We are in the next 24 hours exercise the opportunity to offer more love. Shall we, dear friends? Love, justice, and charity calls for us to put love into action. So let us hope that tonight, as we sleep physically, we can all receive instruction in the spiritual realm to learn detachment from the illusions that alienate us, from the erroneous belief that people or things are. Learn to thank God for everything, that is given to us from the smallest little molecule of air through to all the relationships that nourish our soul. Let us learn together, dear friends, to recognize God as the number one center stage reference in our life. God is the truth. God is love. So love we shall find. Right, dear friends? Let us then continue to nourish our souls as we together unite to practice letting go of the ego and putting love into action. For now, then, dear friends, we wish you many blessings and we invite you to stay tuned, right? We are always nourishing our souls. A big hug to everyone, and we are already looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye, friends.